So what are we going to do today, Cousin BW?
The same thing we do every day, Melvin. Try to take over the neighborhood. Hey y'all, Bloodwing here. Back to bring some grumpiness to your internet. Yes, it's time once again for Heifer of the Week. A little behind on this one because of life, things happening in my life. If you follow me on Twitter, you'll know. If you don't, it's not important. Got in my fee-fees a little bit, and I'm out of them now. I'm okay. So, time for Heifer of the Week. Our subject today, I've actually been holding for a few weeks since Thanksgiving. I haven't seen anybody else cover this video, but perhaps they have. Doesn't matter. But, yeah, it's different. And by looking at his content, I just may have several videos in the future out of this guy. I don't know. We'll see.
So what you're saying there, Cousin BW, is this guy is what they call on the internet a real log cow? Is that what it is?
Yeah, Melvin. I think he is anyway. He's one of those overeducated types that thinks of things that nobody else does and thinks outside of the box. And what he does is just thinks himself right into stupid. But I won't take any more time. Let's get right into that thing and introduce you to Heifer of the Week.
So if you're in the United States, then it's Thanksgiving, which is kind of a weird holiday because it's so tied up with whiteness.
Wow. Imagine that. A holiday that celebrates the early times of this country tied up in whiteness. Might that maybe be because it was white people that were coming to this shore? What do you think?
I mean, the Thanksgiving story involves a bunch of white people having dinner with a bunch of Native Americans who, brought the food, and then skips ahead past the part where white people systematically annihilated or displaced them all. And yay, Norman Rockwell, I guess.
See, what some of you may not know about me, some will, is I'm a huge history buff. Love history. You know, if I had nothing but the History Channel and maybe a couple other channels that show good documentaries, I'd be happy. Even though it clears out my house. Let Papa start talking about history and everybody runs. But that's okay. I love it. And for a history buff like me, this is where this guy already delves deep into stupid. Now, moron, did you realize that Thanksgiving as a set-aside holiday existed long before white men started coming to these shores? It was practiced over in Europe. But you're talking about the American version of Thanksgiving. There's a lot of other versions. Canadian, for example. There's Spanish. There's English. There's a lot of different versions. But I'm only going to deal with the American version. Let people of those other nations cover theirs. Yes, you're right. In our schools, what is taught is that feast in 1621 where white men and Indian tribes got together. Indians did, or Native Americans, if you will, and excuse me, I'm part Cherokee, so I'm very attuned to the plight of the Native American, but I don't take too much offense to stuff like that. I mean, Trail of Tears, anybody? Come on. I know what their plight is, and I know what they've been up against, but let's be honest and serious here. What this has to do with is that feast in 1621 that the Native Americans did provide most of the food. They also taught the white men how to fish for eel, how to grow maize or corn, which was unknown to Western civilization before then, and how to survive. And it's well documented. It did happen. And that's what they teach in our schools that Thanksgiving is based on. To say that they gloss over the annihilation of the American Indian is a misnomer. That happened after. This is a day celebrating that period. Okay? So in order for him to have glossed over it, that would have had to have happened at the same time or later. It wasn't until probably 30 years later before genocide of the Indians started happening. And yes, it was bad. But at the beginning, they all got together, and it wasn't even the first American Thanksgiving. The honor of that was probably the one in 1541 that celebrated the expedition of Francisco Vasquez de Coronado, who had safely crossed the high plains of Texas and found game. So, you really need to learn to history, fella, because it existed long before the genocides that you're talking about. Now, what Thanksgiving has become today is more in line with what they come across the ocean with, in that it's just a day to be thankful for what we have. Whether or not you believe in a God makes no difference. You can still be thankful for what you have. That's what it's about. And I see lots of people, including you, going on and on about it overlooks the genocide of Indians, and it might interest you to know that not all Native American groups put it down for that. A few do, but the majority don't care. You're just another one of those white guys that wants to hate himself for being white, aren't you?
And this has been on my mind because I'm white, and my family is white, and most of my friends are white, and I realized very quickly after the presidential election of a man who very unabashedly channels white nationalism.
In the words of my friend Marty, citation needed. And okay, so what if he was? Why is it wrong for us to be proud to be white when others are allowed to be proud to be black or brown or yellow or whatever color they are? I'm not saying you should believe that whatever color you are is better than the other, but what's wrong with being okay with it, being proud of it? But we all know that's not allowed, right?
I belong to a group of people whose feelings on the matter can be succinctly expressed in the sentence, well, it's going to be interesting. I've been reading an essay by the Danish existentialist philosopher Søren Kierkegaard called The Present Age. It's got a lot in it that I'm sort of, but really though, about, but there are other parts that really are resonant with me right now, even though he was writing in 1846. Like he says that our own age is essentially one of understanding, and on the average perhaps more knowledgeable than any former generation, but it is without passion. Everyone knows a great deal, we all know which way we ought to go and all the different ways we can go, but nobody is willing to move. And earlier he writes that reflection becomes evil when it transforms the capacity for action into a means for the escape from action.
And it may surprise you that I agree. People can think about what's wrong in the world so much that they fail to do anything about it. And something tells me that you're the kind of person that probably falls in that category.
This, in a nutshell, is sort of what white privilege is all about. I, as a white male, can afford to know about and reflect on injustice and inequality while at the same time doing nothing about it.
I'm white. I hate myself. White people are privileged. Oh, stop it. First of all, there's no such thing as white privilege anymore. Might have existed once, but not now. Secondly, what you talk about, any race group can do. Any color can do. You know, it's not just up to whites to do something about it. They can all consider it and do something accordingly.
In other words, privilege can afford to have theory without praxis.
Now, I'm sure my audience probably knows what that word means, but just in case you don't, it's just a big fancy word for not putting your theory into practice. And it doesn't take privilege to do that. As I already stated, any group, regardless of color, can have all sorts of theories and can afford to not put them into practice. It's not just a white person thing.
And don't get me wrong, critical reflection on how and why injustice exists is vital and necessary. Read Mackenzie Wark's letter to his students about being an immigrant and reappropriating the Thanksgiving myth. Read Martin Luther King Jr.'s letter from a Birmingham jail about the moderate white ally. Read Peggy McIntosh's Unpacking the Invisible Knapsack and make your own list of how privilege affects your life. Links to all these in the doobly-doo, by the way.
Yeah, I took a look at those links, and the first one and the third one is just more feminist patriarchy, white hate garbage. You all can go to his videos and follow the links if you want to, but take my word for it. It's just garbage and all stuff we've all debunked over and over and over again. But what I will touch on is your reference to Martin Luther King, to that letter. As I said, I'm a history buff. And I'm also, as a white man, a follower and a firm believer in the ideology that MLK espoused. Now, if you take a look at that letter, and I was going to read some from it, but I want to try to keep this short. Yes, he gets on to certain of the whites, of the liberals. But it was a direct response to a letter from some supposed quote-unquote church leaders that told him that maybe he shouldn't be getting arrested and it was the wrong thing to do. In other words, they were saying, we agree with your cause, but maybe you should cease and desist. What you failed to cherry pick out of there is he went on to praise numerous white brethren that not only supported it publicly, but also marched with him, went to jail with him, stayed in roach-infested hovels with him. So you did what most of your kind do. You cherry-pick what fits your narrative and don't want to look at the rest. Now, if any of you want to go look up that letter, it's readily available online, and I recommend you do so. It's a good read.
But then act on that reflection. Here's a woefully short list of ideas of things to do, and I'm talking to myself as much as anyone here. Speak to your white peers. Call out racism and prejudice and privilege. Put your privilege to work to expose and dismantle it where you can.
Again, white people are not the only ones that can be racist, so this is something that can be done by all groups.
Support materially those who need it. If you're at the table giving thanks for a huge spread of awesome food, how about donating some of the money that made that spread possible to the people who need it? Charities and organizations for the poor, or refugees, or oppressed minority groups.
Why is this just a white thing, a white responsibility? This would be a good thing to do. I would applaud it from anybody, regardless of color.
If you make art, make more art that speaks to this moment, that builds bridges towards complex, empathetic, and challenging thinking and engagement. Reject injustice. Do good. Happy Thanksgiving.
All good things. But again, you have not demonstrated why this is a white person's only responsibility. Oh, sure, you tried to make this into a white thing by saying it's a white man's only holiday, and it's not. It's open for everybody to give thanks for what you've got. You've made it into a white person thing because you're one of those SJW white people that hate that you're white. You wish you were something else. Anyway, I think that's all the evidence that we need to crown him the new recipient of Heifer of the Week. So there you have it. But before I go, I'm going to give the obligatory babysitting. Not that I think that any of my subscribers would do such a thing, but just remember, don't go after him, because remember, folks, cyberbullying is wrong. Don't do it. And that's all the time we're going to take for today. I'll see you all again when I do the Grump of the Week. And as always, get out of my yard.